Good day. Today we will be looking at writing the findings and discussion chapter in a mini dissertation. This is also known as chapter 4. During chapter 4, depending on your research methodology, your discussion chapter will look at the findings that you have collected and analyzed and interpreted will come into play in chapter 4, the findings chapter. Now, depending on what type of research methodology you employed, a qualitative versus quantitative discussion of the research findings chapter will look different. That is because during qualitative data collection, we are obtaining data in the form of a conversation. It is words. Whereas in a quantitative research data collection, we are obtaining information related to a statistical analysis. Now, by following a statistical analysis, it brings out a different visualization and examination in the chapter 4, the findings and discussion chapter. Okay, so essentially what chapter 4 needs to include is it needs to entail the collected data, telling a story of what was collected and what are the findings actually saying. During this chapter 4, you will provide the tables, the quotes, the data that has provided you insight into your objectives and your research questions. Okay, if you followed a quantitative methodology, you need to have the data set indicating the hypotheses, what was supported and what hypotheses are not supported. So this is what needs to come into discussion during the chapter 4 of your honors mini dissertation chapter. Okay, now remember your chapter 4 is not your conclusion. Okay, chapter 4 is only indicating what the findings provided and how you got to that finding. So, under question A, in my, let's say we are doing a qualitative methodology, my first question in my interview discussion or my focus group was on what are the disadvantages of eating fast food takeout. Okay, that would then have the data and the quotes of that discussion underneath in one section. Okay. If you had a similar question related to a quantitative methodology, you will then indicate the statistical insight and the hypothesis related to that specific question and objectives and what the outcome was. So in this chapter, you are only identifying what was found, what the data is saying, but you are not concluding. This is not the conclusion chapter. So your chapter 4 indicates this is the research findings. This is what I found for question 1. This is what I found for question 2. And you do that continuously for all your questions that you asked and what data was found for those questions. Okay. Then in your conclusion chapter, that is where you now summarize and indicate this is what was found and this is my recommendations. Okay, based on the findings in my chapter 4. So you need to identify what was found, how you obtained your specific results, and provide insight into that. Why are these findings important? This chapter 4, by following and answering these three aspects in your chapter 4 will then provide you for that summary and recommendations and implications needed for your final chapter 5 of the mini dissertation. Okay. Now let's get into what it might look like if we are in a qualitative versus a quantitative review here, and what those chapters would essentially look like when we are discussing those findings. Now we can see here that a quantitative chapter 4 and discussion of findings is going to look different than a qualitative discussion. Okay, so in quantitative, we're going to bring out our descriptive statistics and our inferential statistics, those tables and examinations that you've executed to do the tests and identify the relationships and what the data is actually saying. You need to present those tables and figures and those narratives in your chapter 4. Okay. What are the statistics meaning? What does this specific table indicate in relation to the statistical tests that you've carried out, and what those meanings and values essentially mean? Okay, here is a nice example. We place the figure, we place a table, and we discuss. Okay, don't assume that the reader is going to automatically understand. Remember, you are the author here, the researcher. You are telling the story, and you need to be as descriptive and provide a detailed narrative into what your data is essentially saying. Okay, and give a clear indication. Remember, don't assume. Indicate the correlations. What are the hypotheses actually saying? Okay, if you've done a demographic descriptive statistics, provide the figures, the tables. What is it saying? Are there more males over females that participated in your study? Give that insight. What are the age categories? What are the industries? What are the provinces? If that's the direction and type of questions that were included, you need to be very specific for the reader. Okay, because remember, your reader is your examiner. Right now, it is your supervisors giving you feedback in order to get your mini dissertation to a specific quality for the examiners to be able to evaluate and examine. Okay, and the same applies with your qualitative. Qualitative, if you've gone into asking the descriptive demographic questions, age, income, industry, province, and so forth, then you need to give those insights. You can put it in a figures, in a table formation. You are allowed to include that when we are talking about the demographics of those individuals that participated in the study in a qualitative perspective. Okay, so add that insight, give us the demographic background. Then you need to ensure that you indicate the themes, the codes, okay, using that thematic analysis, and give us the story. How did you end up with a specific set of codes? Okay, how did you get to a specific theme of disadvantages, including lack of administrative efficiency, if that is an example? What quotes align to that specific theme and codes that led you to that direction of your findings? Okay, link it to your objectives, link it to your research questions. It's a story. Be very specific. Remember, we don't indicate who and the names of our participants and respondents. We use the anonymity, okay? We are protecting their identities. So we need to ensure we allocate the required pseudonyms and ensure that we are not giving insight and personal indications away as to who participated in our studies. Okay, and here is an example. Give the quotes. Don't give a paragraph of a quote. Get the sentence or the few sentences that indicate and speak to the story of the theme that you've now concluded has resulted in you saying that this is a specific advantage or disadvantage, okay, for the study at hand. Gain those quotes. Don't put quotes that are going to take up an entire page, because you need to include as many quotes as possible, all right, from your collected data that gives you insight into where these conclusions and findings are coming from, okay? Provide insight. Be careful with how you are portraying. It needs to be a true reflection of what the respondents and participants are stating. Okay. Now, please ensure it sticks to a specific theme or research objective and hypotheses when we are discussing our findings and demonstrating in this chapter. We need to ensure we are clear. Okay, be consistent. Ensure your tables, figures, and your presentation of the data is in a funnel approach, providing a full and presentable formatted document for the supervisors and the examiners to read. Okay. And here is a nice checklist I've just put together. You need to ensure that you sit, you work, you take a break, do something different, and come back and review. It is a continuous process. Have a walk, have a moment to think about what you are doing and how you can improve it. Have a break, come back, review. Okay? And that is what your chapter 4 entails. Please use their examples. Continue to keep up to date with what your data is indicating and be transparent. And that brings us to the end of this discussion.